Welcome to another episode of Cosmic Conversations. I am your hostess, Marla Martenson, and I am here with the lovely Carol Howe, master teacher of A Course in Miracles. Hey, Carol.
Hi, dear. How are you? I just love seeing you again and your beautiful smile.
Oh, thanks. And you're just pretty in pink over there. It's beautiful. And we're in December, but we're like, you're Florida, I'm LA, so it's tropical. Us, right?
I know. I almost had, so I could wear my red Christmas sweater, I almost had to turn on the air conditioning.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Me too. I'm in long sleeves.
I don't have to do that.
So you guys
celebrate Christmas.
I know. So you guys, I was sharing with Carol my newest acquisition, which if you watch my videos regularly, you might be sick of this, but I've been showing Nigel my crystal skull, which I'm just having so much fun with. I'm using him for meditation, for inspiration. Crystals are real intelligent beings out of the earth, so they do have intelligence. You know, they can be programmed. So Carol mentioned that, Nigel is a good reminder that I'm loved. And what else? So I wanted to talk about how at the holidays, some people might be alone. As we get older, I'm noticing this. I have just my mother left now, and she's just turned 80, and she's having a rough time with it. And I know that in a few years I'll be kind of an orphan, no siblings, no parents, I have my husband and my dog, and but some people have nobody, and we feed the homeless twice a week up in Seattle, and we see a lot of people alone. So talk to us a little bit about Christmas time and being alone and knowing that you're loved, and what people can do to not feel so bad.
Okay, well, that's a mouthful. So the first thing I will say, just to completely throw everything up in the air, is there's a line in A Course in Miracles that says, if you think you're alone because there's not another body with you, then you're insane.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
Usually it does this flowing iambic pentameter, but every once in a while it just throws in one of these, pay attention, everybody, nobody's ever alone. We're so used to thinking of ourselves primarily as a body, and then secondarily whatever else, intelligence or awareness or something like that. But that's not true. We are, in fact, all connected. And that's not very helpful if it's only just an intellectual idea, although it's the first step, like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So just to entertain the idea of, what if I'm not really alone? So that doesn't make sense unless I can have some sort of more helpful experience. Mm-hmm. In other words, so that when people feel alone, whether it's at Christmas triggers that for a lot of people, but Christmas doesn't cause it. Mm-hmm. See, there's a very big difference between causation and something that's triggered. So what happens is every one of us, when we believe we're separate, and more importantly, when we think we don't deserve to be loved, we think we're guilty about something, or we think somebody else is guilty about something, we just simply get everything all tangled up. We get things all mixed up, and that sense of loneliness or isolation comes from feeling guilty, feeling less than, beliefs that we hold about ourselves. In other words, Christmas doesn't cause it. They're sitting there like an unhealed place in every one of us. This isn't like it applies to some people and some others. It's just that some people have more distractions and addictions, and it takes their attention away. Mm-hmm. But when you're by yourself, unless you just indulge in every addiction that you can possibly imagine, it provides a place for that, we'll just call it distress, that sense of longing to come up into conscious awareness. Once it's in conscious awareness, if I will not push against it, if I will not resist it, if I will not decide that this is a terrible thing to be feeling, if I can just settle in and allow myself to feel actually how I feel with no story attached to it. In other words, it's like, this is just a feeling I'm having. It starts to dissipate. It just starts to change into another kind of feeling. So if you want, you can use shall we say, being alone at Christmas as a spiritual practice. You can use anything as a spiritual practice. But if you are alone, I'm going to be alone at Christmas. I have 2 grown sons. One's in Denver with his family. My other one lives here, and he and his wife are going up to Philadelphia, and they invited me to come along, which I did last year. And I'm delighted to be home at Christmas. It's like I have a lot to do. And mostly I don't feel like I'm left out or I'm rejected or I'm excluded, and I don't have distressing feelings come along with it. So we just need to take apart all that.
So now, but you have kids and you have family who loves you. Now, what about people who don't have any kids or any family or husband or anything? And then it's particularly because of society. I guess society tells us it's that picture, that Rockwell picture of a family around the Christmas tree, or even if you're not going to be with them, they love you. You could have gone, you could call, but that image that is pounded into us, that the opening presents on Sunday or Christmas morning.
Yes, exactly. It's a story that we've bought into.
Yes.
And if it's a story and not a truth, then we can buy out of it.
Okay.
I'm
buying out of a lot of stories this year.
We don't have to do that. My parents are long gone, but it's the idea that loneliness, as I say, is not really about Christmas. Christmas triggers it, and it triggers it for an awful lot of people.
Yes.
So I'm not in any way pretending like that doesn't happen, because absolutely it does. But you see, if we make the statement that what all of us are actually expressions of love, and that we are beloved and safe, all of those things are true, whether we're aware of it or not. If you decide on Christmas Day or in the holidays, 2 things: not to fight against your situation. If your situation is you are alone, don't turn being alone into the enemy. In other words, it will help you notice how much we fight against and push against things that we have decided are in our, not in our own best interests. There's something about this that is in our best interest. And you go, what on earth could be in our best interest to be alone? Well, possibly it's in your best interest to begin to feel how you feel, clear it out, expand, and grow. We just hate it when we have to take these steps toward our own enlightenment, and yet nobody can take those for us.
No, they can't, and that's ultimately what's going to bring us peace. I mean, that's it.
Well, see, that's it. It's like, if I feel like my peace and my sense of contentment and my sense of happiness rests in the hands of other people, especially other people that I don't even have, then wow, what a crummy, unfair situation that would be. So I have to always know that whether my ego mind knows it or not, I'm always in position. You see, like your crystal skull, we are loved. Nigel, is this not true? We are loved, we're adored, we're supported. And if we think for 1 second that if it was in our best interest for our growing and our own spiritual development, if we think that we're missing something, then we don't understand how supported we are. We may be being very supported by being by ourselves and learning what that's really all about. You might say, I don't want to be on a spiritual path, and I don't want that kind of thing supported. I want what I want. Yeah. Well, you know what? Your ego mind just is never, ever going to get everything it wants, because it doesn't support our actual path to peace, to happiness, to contentment that is anchored within us and is not dependent on anything else. You see, who wants their peace and feeling loved and adored dependent on anything except my choices?
Yes, absolutely. That's power. Yeah. Otherwise, we're just powerless, floating around, being taught like badminton.
Power, and it's the powerlessness and the fury that's throwing gasoline on the I'm lonely fire.
Right.
In other words, it's like, I am responding to my experience of loneliness in a way that makes it worse rather than better. So if we would just decide, if we would take away the story, see, the story has so much to do with it. Let's pretend like a video camera is videoing any of us who are by ourselves. And it's like the video camera with no sound just is taking a picture of somebody in their house.
Okay.
That's all. There's no script yet. Now, if I add the script that says, I'm all by myself and nobody loves me and this isn't any fun and it just means life is terrible and on and on and on. If you add that script to your video, which is what we tend to do based on all sorts of factors that are incorrect about ourselves, then it's just going to be worse and worse and worse and worse. But I could add a different kind of script. In other words, so here's my person, me, you, anybody, if we're sitting by ourselves, and it could go, I love the fact that I can be quiet. I can really focus inward. I can realize this is about my own rebirth. This is a clean new slate for me to start all over again. And I believe to the core of my being that if it were in my best interests that there was somebody else here, they would be. So the absence of somebody tells me I'm being supported in ways that I may not understand. But the bottom line script is always going to be, I'm loved, I'm supported, I'm deserving. I need to hang on to that story instead of the other one.
And
what do you think?
I think also if you're spiritual or religious, and if you think about what Christmas is representing, the Christ consciousness, Jesus, so you would be supported by God, by Jesus, by the angels, and it is a great way to deep dive into your spiritual practice. And I've been diving more, making sure I meditate 20 minutes, working with my crystal skull. I've been cleaning out my office, and I'm going to clean out my armoire. I'm kind of like using this time as a cleansing spiritual practice, and then ready for the new year.
But you see, the other thing is that we've grown up again with a false narrative.
Yes.
It's like we live in our own little pile of fake news of stuff we believe about ourselves. And some of the worst, most disastrous fake news is that we're guilty, we're not deserving, we're not okay. It's like other people get to be loved, but I don't. None of that is true. And this is a marvelous time to go, what if my take on things, what if the things that I have programmed in are incorrect? They're not evil and they're not criminal, but they aren't correct. Like, who wants to be living out of a narrative that's fake news?
Right.
We live out of fake news. Truly, we live out of a lot of false information. I mean, that's the whole idea of fake news. You know, you've got false information, and then you make your decisions based on false information. Oh, this is not smart. This is not a good idea. So the other thing, since we have been told, and it is true, this is not fake news, that we are an expression of love. We're kind of a nexus of giving and receiving love. So we're told and we're taught through every valid spiritual practice there is that you experience what you offer to others. Right. So if I don't feel loved, if I just feel like I'm all by myself and things aren't as I would like for them to be, it's literally offer to others. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go dish out food at the soup kitchen, although that's a marvelous thing to do, but it means to be in the attitude of, how can I regard others in a way that would support them, whether you're actually speaking to them or even thinking about them, because turning your mind around so that you are allowing yourself your most basic vocation, which is giving and giving and giving. Because and that doesn't mean your money. It means your attention. It means your prayers. It means your goodwill. It means wanting the best for everybody, whether there are any bodies there or not, doesn't matter. It matters that this be your internal intention. And the reason why this is so important is, listen to this, we experience what we offer to others.
Right.
So if I can move myself into offering mode, I begin to feel more full and more content and more at peace, with or without somebody in the house.
This is so true. I have a perfect example. Last night I went to a Christmas party at this beautiful gal who gives a party every year, and she has all these beautiful girlfriends. There's some guys there too, but a lot of wonderful ladies, and we do a gift exchange, and it's just great.
Mm-hmm.
One of the gals was sitting on the couch. We were sitting about four of us near each other, and one guy was sitting next to her, touching her back, and I heard her saying she's going to have back surgery. She's always in so much pain. And I said, hey, why don't you come over here? I'll give you some Reiki. And she said, oh, and she came and sat, and I got up and I did the clearing, and I, had her breathe, and I had some lavender oil, breathe the oil, and I did my, like a 10 or 15 minute session for her right there. And she was so thrilled. She says, oh, I started seeing shapes. She started seeing sacred geometry in her third eye. She was feeling the cleansing. She was like, thank you.
There's Nigel at work again.
What?
Nigel
again. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. And she was so thrilled. And the whole night she was glowing, and she was telling people, she gave me this Reiki, and it felt so good. Like that was a Christmas party to give, and I was able to give and share. And it was just made me feel so great, and it made the whole experience of the night just magical.
And that's what can happen whether we're in a room full of people or whether we're by ourselves. When we begin to think, if I'm so called by myself, it's because what I can allow to come up, what I can allow myself to experience, the way I can change my mind about some things. We just have this awful belief, fake news belief, that somehow we get created and we're just tossed out there on our own and have to kind of make it the best way we can.
Right.
Well, that is so not an accurate worldview. That's a worldview that we've learned. Everybody's programmed inaccurately when we're little, but it's not the truth. The truth is we are just surrounded. I have to tell you this story that might seem like it's off track, but several years ago, 3.5 years ago, a good friend of mine passed away. He's the only man I know who seemed to be very excited about this. Most people aren't excited about their pending demise, but he was. And he had a kind of cancer that was completely painless, so he wasn't having to take palliative drugs or anything to keep. And so his wife said she could tell that he was kind of going back and forth, but we'll call it between dimensions. She said, it looks like he's asleep, but I know he's not asleep. And he would kind of wake up again, and her daughter, who this was a second marriage for them, and her daughter was also a very good friend of this man's, and he spoke her name, and he said, and he wasn't demented, he just said, I hate to be the one to break the news to you, but do you know you're dead? And she said, no, I'm not, and you aren't either. And he said, yes, we are. I mean, he's confused about what's going on, but he's not demented. He knows where he is and so on. And then he says, and he speaks with this beautiful Southern drawl, is from Mississippi. And he said, I want all of you to come in here and sit down. And so his wife and the daughter and the nurse are there, and they say, we're all here. And he said, no, all those other people. And they said, there aren't any other people. And he said, there are too. They had a beautiful house in his bedroom. He said, there are at least 150 people out here in the living room, at least. And they said, there's nobody there. And he said, they are. I can see them. They're all there. There's this lovely group of people. And he said, I'll never forget this. I have this recorded someplace else, I don't know, in a video someplace. And he said, okay, in his very sweet way, okay, I want all of you to come in and sit down, and we're going to sort out who's dead and who's alive.
Oh, wow.
It's like, for
That'll
some
take
reason,
a long time. 150 people out
sort of,
there.
yeah, but the recognition that his house was filled. And you hear people say that all the time. I've had people in my house who are the psychic kind of people who can see into other dimensions talk about the people in my house. At one point, someone said, the whole time I've been here for a session, somebody has been walking up and down your hallway. And it's like, really? She said, well, they don't really walk, they float. So she described this person, described to a T my brother, who had passed away about 2 years before that.
Yeah, I think you had told me about your brother walking down the hall. Now, did you see him ever, or it was just the
No,
psychic?
I don't have that talent.
Okay.
But and I said, why is he here? He said, oh, he loves you. He's here. He's supporting you. He's
nice.
here for you, just like all these people in Jappy's house, all the people who can do that.
Right.
And the purpose for that is not, if you can't see them, that may not be any help.
Right.
But everything that supports our reprogramming ourselves to realize we are dearly, dearly beloved. We are dearly beloved. We're safe. We're encouraged. We're surrounded. And you see, the fake news narrative that we learned is we aren't deserving of love because of all our transgressions. We feel like we've ruined ourselves, we've hurt others, that it's permanent, it's cast in stone, nothing can be done about it. That's a totally false notion.
If you're a Christian, that's what you're told from the get-go. You're sin. You were born in sin. You're a sinner from the time you pop out.
Yeah,
right?
Talk about fake news. Wow. The inner script writer that says, see, this means I'm not cared for, that I don't have anything valuable to offer, blah, 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 blah. And you go, if I could just close out that script writer and hire a new script writer that says, and this is what the new script writer needs to say, no matter what happens, what it means is I'm loved and safe. Mm-hmm. You go, really? That's the conclusion I need to draw? Yes, because that's the new, actual, true news that I need to begin to incorporate in my thinking to replace the fake news.
Right. We're just implanted.
Nobody can get inside my head and do it for me, so I have to do that. But I'm not going to be inclined to do that until I understand that I was incorrectly programmed. That doesn't mean that we're wrong or that we're false or that we're bad or that we're unlovable, but it does mean we have a program in our heads that says all of those unfortunate things about ourselves. And you know what? It's not going away unless I specifically recognize it's there and go, well, it's now my responsibility to take very loving care of myself. You see, we don't want it. We think, well, I've been mistreated and it's somebody else's responsibility now to take care of me. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is there may be all kinds of people who want to, but they can't. Remember, the world is a mirror. If we won't take care of ourselves, if we won't elevate ourselves in our own awareness, we prevent anybody else from doing that as well.
Right.
So we've got to keep writing a new script. For some reason. Because always, and I think we've talked about it before, but it needs to be said about 5,000 times, that other people treat us the way we treat ourselves. So if I've got this program, and I might not even realize it's operative because it's so unpleasant, I've got it shoved into my unconscious mind, but if I carry with me this program that says I'm not really very important, then other people pick that up and they treat us that way. So that's why the other people, so to speak, supply us this very important diagnostic material. Yeah. And we go, couldn't we just stop doing all of this big spiritual practice stuff and couldn't I just have my way? It's like, this is the way to have your way. So
and when you start working on yourself and clearing out this stuff and the spiritual work, do you notice that people might start falling out of your life? Maybe friends that you had, they disappear, decide they don't want to talk to you anymore, or
they may disappear,
Yeah.
or they may suddenly go, and you'll think, oh, I don't know what's happened. That person used to be such a mess, and now they're so nice, and they seem to be pleasant, and they seem to be friendly. Yes, when you substantively change your mind about you,
Mm-hmm.
the troublesome people will either suddenly not be troublesome, or they won't be in your life anymore. And the whole thing will be an easy kind of transition.
Mm-hmm.
So back to your original question about being alone at Christmas time,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a thing. It's in our best interests to realize that if I feel lonely, if I feel left out or whatever, that is not a function of what's happening around me. It's a function of the fake news. It's a function of my beliefs about myself, which I must become aware of and change. And if I'm going to stay completely distracted right out to the very end of my life and never I'll have these moments where I'm with myself, I can never trade in the old false script for one that's true.
Right.
Look at all the people you know who, if they can't have their phones in front of them all the time, they think they're going to have to go jump off the bridge. It's like, put your phone down.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody will stop drinking, stop all of the addictions and distractions, everybody's going to find that experience that we might call loneliness, and it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. And everybody is running from it and escaping it, and yet if we would stop, if we would allow ourselves to just feel how that feels, it will settle, and then I can start to what is it I really believe? Because that's what's driving it.
Thank you, Carol. This has been
Oh,
beautiful,
my dear,
enlightening.
so
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone, and much love. Bye.
Thank you, dear.